future." "Surely," said I, "cows and pigs and poultry might be kept; and you know, where there is plenty of milk, butter, cheese, and eggs, with pork and fowls, persons cannot be very badly off for food." "Very true," replied my friend; "but I must tell you it is easier to talk of these things at first than to keep them, unless on cleared or partially cleared farms. But we are speaking of a first settlement in the backwoods. Cows, pigs, and fowls must eat, and if you have nothing to give them unless you purchase it, and perhaps you have to bring it from some distance, you had better not be troubled with them, as the trouble is certain and the profit doubtful. A cow, it is true, will get her living during the open months of the year in the bush, but sometimes she will ramble away for days together, and then you lose the use of her and possibly much time in seeking her. Then in the winter she requires some additional food to the browse that she can get during the chopping season, or 10 to 1 but she dies before the spring. Note. The cattle are supported in a great measure during the fall and winter by eating the tender shoots of the maple, beech, and bass, which they seek in the newly chopped fallow; but they should likewise be allowed straw or other food, or they will die in the very hard weather. And as cows generally lose their milk during the cold weather, it is not very well kept. It is best to part with them in the fall and buy again in the spring, unless you have plenty of food for them, which is not often the case the first winter. As to pigs, they are great plagues on a newly cleared farm, if you cannot fat them off hand, and that you cannot do without you buy food for them, which does not answer to do at first. If they run loose, they are a terrible annoyance both to your own crops and to your neighbours', if you happen to be within half a mile of one; for though you may fence out cattle, you cannot pigs. Even poultry require something more than they pick up about the dwelling to be of any service to you, and are often taken off by hawks, eagles, foxes, and polecats, till you have proper securities for them." "Then how are we to spin our own wool and make our own soap and candles," said I, "when you are able to kill your own sheep and hogs and oxen, unless you buy wool and tallow?" Then, seeing me begin to look somewhat disappointed, he said, "Be not cast down; you will have all these things in time, and more than these, never fear, if you have patience and use the means of obtaining them. In the meanwhile, prepare your mind for many privations to which at present you are a stranger; and if you would desire to see your husband happy and prosperous, be content to use economy, and above all be cheerful. In a few years the farm will supply you with all the necessaries of life, and by and by you may even enjoy many of the luxuries. Then it is that a settler begins to taste the real and solid advantages of his emigration; then he feels the blessings of a country where there are no taxes, tithes, nor poor rates; then he truly feels the benefits of independence. It is looking forward to this happy fulfilment of his desires that makes the rough paths smooth, and lightens the burden of present ills. He looks round upon a numerous family without those anxious fears that beset a father in moderate circumstances at home, for he knows he does not leave them destitute of an honest means of support." In spite of all the trials he had encountered, I found this gentleman was so much attached to a settler's life, that he declared he would not go back to his own country to reside for a permanence on any account; nor is he the only one I have heard express the same opinion, and it likewise seems a universal one among the lower class of emigrants. They are encouraged by the example of others whom they see enjoying comforts that they could never have obtained had they laboured ever so hard at home; and they wisely reflect they must have had hardships to endure had they remained in their native land. Many indeed had been driven out by want, without the most remote chance of bettering themselves or becoming the possessors of land free from all restrictions. What to us are the poor sufferings of 1, 2, 3, or even 4 years, compared with a whole life of labour and poverty?" was the remark of a poor labourer who was recounting to us the other day some of the hardships he had met with in this country. He said he "knew they were only for a short time, and that by industry he should soon get over them." I have already seen two of our poor neighbours that left the parish a 12 month ago. They are settled in Canada Company lots, and are getting on well. They have some few acres cleared and cropped, but are obliged to hire out, to enable their families to live, working on their own land when they can. The men are in good spirits, and say, they shall in a few years have many comforts about them that they never could have got at home, had they worked late and early; but they complain that their wives are always pining for home, and lamenting that ever they crossed the seas. This seems to be the general complaint with all classes. The women are discontented and unhappy. Few enter with their whole heart into a settler's life. They miss the little domestic comforts they had been used to enjoy. They regret the friends and relations they left in the old country, and they cannot endure the loneliness of the backwoods. This prospect does not discourage me. I know I shall find plenty of occupation within doors, and I have sources of enjoyment when I walk abroad that will keep me from being dull. Besides, have I not a right to be cheerful and contented for the sake of my beloved partner? The change is not greater for me than him, and if for his sake I have voluntarily left home and friends and country, shall I therefore sadden him by useless regrets? I am always inclined to subscribe to that sentiment of my favourite poet, Goldsmith: "Still to ourselves in every place consigned, Our own felicity we make or find." But I shall be very soon put to the test as we leave this town to morrow by 10 o'clock. The purchase of the lake lot is concluded. There are 3 acres chopped and a shanty up, but the shanty is not a habitable dwelling, being merely an open shed that was put up by the choppers as a temporary shelter. So we shall have to build a house. Late enough we are, too late to get in a full crop, as the land is merely chopped, not cleared, and it is too late now to log and burn the fallow, and get the seed wheat in. But it will be ready for spring crops. We paid $5.50 per acre for the lot. This was rather high for wild land so far from a town, and in a scantily settled part of the township; but the situation is good, and has a water frontage, for which my husband was willing to pay something more than if the lot had been further inland. In all probability it will be some time before I find leisure again to take up my pen. We shall remain guests with till our house is in a habitable condition, which I suppose will be about Christmas. Chapter 7.